right. Good morning, Doug. We're happy to have you back in Uruguay. So, welcome back, first of all.
Well, I'm happy to be back in Uruguay. Uh, Big difference from being in the US. The artwork is different. There's my ducks painted into a corner, and my other ducks. This is it, the Marxism, death of capitalism, sitting on a pile of dollars as the sun sinks in the west. Okay, so that's proof positive that I'm back in Uruguay.
You're right. Exactly.
Plus, that's my backyard. I don't know if you can see it or not.
Oh, yeah.
Further proof.
It's like a proof of life sort of thing almost.
If you're here in Uruguay, you probably don't have to worry about that dawn raid knock on the door the way so many Americans do these days. But as Kim.com found, even in New Zealand, they can send a SWAT team in to get you if they want you.
Yep.
But he had a bomb-proof safe room.
Right. Which they spent, I think, more than a day working on and couldn't manage to get into it.
That's amazing. Those Kiwis are such whip dogs that they would allow the U.S. government to send a SWAT team in to extradite a German citizen. What the hell's going on here?
That's ridiculous. Ridiculous. Well, yes, this is a peaceful country. At least it has been, and hopefully will continue to be. And it feels like when you're here, like a lot of the problems of at least the North American centric world sort of fade away, which is it's kind of an ease in your mental health, if nothing else. I think being down here.
Yeah, it does. And it's easier to delude yourself than
Yes,
down here.
which is kind of nice, when
That's
you have
all.
all this craziness happen. So we're going to cover some questions from some of our file members today. For those of you who don't know, we have a private membership area called file.co. There's a link to it in the description to this video. If you're interested in asking questions of Doug and taking out the other advantages of the membership, click the link and see what it's got to offer. So, Doug, let's start off with first one here from Michael. He says, "Would Doug ever think of making a crypto backed by gold in conjunction with somebody like Rick Rule?"
Well, Rick and I are very old buddies. And um, as many of you know, he's starting a bank, Frank Crotter, which I'm invested in. And maybe Rick is going to do that. But, I don't want to get into any kind of a business that's regulated or might draw the eye of Sauron to look at you. So the answer to that question is uh, I have no interest in it. Now, Charles Knight, on the other hand, uh, put together Paladin coin, which is a couple orders of magnitude beyond that when it comes to being naughty. But I'm not going to do that either. I don't need to complicate my life quite that much.
Yeah, I agree. It makes sense. Next question is also about Rick Rule. Strangely, it says Rick Rule says the odds favor precious metals. The only caveat is a synchronized global recession. What does that look like, and how would that differ from a non-synchronized global recession?
Well, uh, quite correct on precious metals. Um, and it's not just going to be a recession, it's going to be a catastrophic depression. That's where I'm putting my money. And synchronized. Well, the whole world is becoming desynchronized, actually, where uh, now Russia and China are in separate orbits completely. Uh, Russia's out of the SWIFT system. The US government confiscated a lot of their assets. China knows that they're next on the runway. The whole world is kind of breaking up. And the US is not the unipolar head uh, of the Mickey Mouse Club anymore. I mean, the peanut gallery is taking on a life of its own. So the depression will strike different countries in different ways. And the ones that will do best are the ones that are most open to individual freedom and low taxes and trade and this type of thing. So the answer to the question is, I I think the US is gonna do really badly in the next few years, um, as will Western Europe, as will a number of other places. I guess we'd have to look at these countries individually. Well, what's gonna do better? Places like Dubai are gonna do pretty well, I think, and, Hong Kong is gonna do a lot better than China itself, I think. Singapore, it depends on who the strong man running it is, and I think that'll do pretty well, and there's probably gonna be some other places that are going to pop up. So, yeah, it's gonna be different in different places.
Okay. Next question asks actually about Dubai. It says Peter Schiff praised the free market in Dubai a couple of podcasts ago. What are Doug's thoughts on Dubai? And does Doug have any experience of free economic zones like those found in Dubai?
Yeah, I've been to Dubai a number of times over the years, and, I think it's gotten better and better, actually. Uh, 90% of the people that live in Dubai are, foreigners, mostly Indians and Filipinos and workers. Same for all of those Emirates. Um, but the foreigners that live there, the Americans and the Europeans, they're generally pretty well to do, have a high standard of living. Fact that it's a, uh, you know, Islamic country doesn't bother you much. You just have to, never bothered me much. You kind of circulate in your own little bubble. I'm all for Dubai. I thought about moving there from time to time. Uh, so the question is there any other place like Dubai? Or I'm all for it, and I hope somebody else. Listen, if the Sheikh can turn Dubai, because when I first went to Dubai, I just passed through the airport, and the airport was just a crappy little building. Uh, with a crappy waiting room and not too many people. And I didn't even go out to look at Dubai because there was nothing there.
What year was that?
Now it's one of the biggest and most advanced airports on the planet. That fast, and
Mm.
all of those buildings came out of nowhere. I mean, the development of Hong Kong and Singapore was fast, but the development of Dubai was warp speed by comparison. Warp speed. So
One of this guy's questions is, do you have any experience with working with or utilizing free economic zones?
yeah, there's people that are doing that type of thing, like everything from the island of Sark, which only has 500 residents. We have a friend who's kind of working to do magic there because they have political independence of a sort. And uh, where else? There's a place in Honduras, and so all this stuff is going on. There are people working on this stuff, and I hope some of them are successful. You know, I hope that libertarians are didn't miss the boat. I hope there's still some libertarian crypto billionaires that are still around because to make these places successful, you've got to have big time capital, big time capital. I'm not just talking a few million or tens of millions. I'm talking a billion or multiple billions. Capital is what it takes. And there might have been, crypto billionaires back in the pre-crash days that could have done it. Maybe there still are. I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so too. Doug, what do you think about coal? Would a long position be wise right now?
Coal. Okay. So coal, for many years, I think used to trade around. We have a futures contract in London, and I think they even have one in the New York Merc. I don't think it ever trades. Um, Coal used to be about $50 a ton. And now thermal coal is supposed to be metallurgical coal, two different things. I presume you're talking about thermal coal, which is the big market. Um, think it's around $400 a ton. It's pretty expensive. So, do I like coal? The higher a commodity goes in price, the less I like it. But at the same time, the good thing about coal, uh, is people are pretty confident there are a couple hundred years or more of coal reserves. It's all the coal in the world anybody could possibly want. And it's spread out all over the world. Indonesia, Russia, Europe, North America. I don't know how much they have in South America. But anyway, uh, coal. Would I invest in coal right now? It was a better idea at $50 than it is at $100.
Yes.
But you can't, the only way you can really invest in coal anyway is through publicly traded coal mining companies. Let's be practical about it. And all the big coal mining companies out there, Peabody Coal in the US, Consolidated is another one, and Arch is another one. And there's a bunch of international companies. As far as I know, they're all selling at just scandalously low price earnings ratios. And by that, I mean uh, 3 or 4 or 5 to 1 price earnings ratios. Um, and I don't know if I wouldn't think institutions own it much because coal is kind of a naughty industry, but maybe they do. I don't know. Listen, I own a couple coal stocks, but it's like all of these industries. It takes a lot of research, and I'm visiting a lot of coal seams. Frankly, I like coal theoretically in a lot of different ways. Speaking from a chemical point of view, big picture point of view, but I've never visited a coal mine, and I don't know guys in the coal business. So all I know about it is the theory, which you can research, and the publicly disclosed facts on coal companies. And I haven't, although I own several, uh, you know, I'm a babe in the woods when it comes to coal.
I,
Saying those things.
I mean, I bought some of Peabody because it was the
Yeah.
only one I really knew anything about, which is tickers BTU. I bought that. I don't know. It was about this time last year, I think, when we first came down to Uruguay last year. So maybe it was in October of last year. And it was going up a huge amount. I mean, I'm looking now, it says it's up 160% year to date. So it's gone up a lot at this point. But the PE ratio, according to what I'm seeing right here, is shows it's still 3.71, which is shocking. But
Pretty cheap. So,
yeah,
obviously, some owners of these coal stocks think the price of coal is going to go down, and therefore their earnings are going to go down. Well, I don't have a strong opinion on it. All I can say is that, if the world was rational, which it's not, you wouldn't be burning coal. You'd be burning uranium or thorium. So
right. Still can't believe it's trading that cheap given how much it's gone up.
it is cheap. I am selling options against it. Those puts and calls, straddles. So that's my participation with Peabody. No strong opinions.
Okay.
You were smart to get in when you did. It's been flat for the last year after it had that big run up about a year ago. So you got
Yep.
in
And
early.
that's when I sold when it moved up that much that fast. I sold my position just because I wasn't paying enough attention to it. I don't know what I'm expecting beyond doubling. So I just sold out of it.
Yeah, that's the problem. It's always, we all get tunnel vision, and everybody gets tunnel vision of some type or another. And while you're watching this thing, there's something else that's really cheap over there that is about to explode. You miss that thing. So we all do it. Everybody does it. So anyway,
Okay. Next
there's
question.
always a train leaving the station. That's the
Oh,
good news.
that is the good news. What does Doug think of Marin Katusa and participation in his subscription to resource speculations? And also, how legit are his calls on carbon credits being the next big investment we should all be looking at? He says multiple big names in the industry are in agreement with Marin, and some are comparing the infancy of carbon credits today to the internet in the 1980s or Bitcoin in the early 2010s.
Listen, I love Marin. We're old friends. Like, huge respect for him. Uh, when he was doing resource deals, they were extremely well researched. No, Marin's a force of nature. I just love it.
Yeah.
But when it comes to this carbon thing, uh, listen, it's going to treat Marin really well with these carbon deals. They treated me really well too. In fact, I not only own warrants from the first one, is that carbon royalty, carbon. I get them
No,
confused because they're all carbon something or other. And to me, they're just trading sardines. So listen, the whole carbon thing is a political scam. It's all bullshit. I mean, all this thing about carbon credits and got to keep carbon down in the atmosphere. uh, This is almost a separate thing that we should talk about because it's scandalous. It's a scam. It's a swindle. It's political hype. It's all bullshit. Okay. And I think that's factual from a scientific point of view and from a philosophical point of view. But so why do I own? I just have own warrants on Barron's first carbon deal. I dumped my stock a long time ago, which was a good move. And I'm speculating in his second deal. Speculating, an investment. It's a trading sardine. And E.B. Tucker, who's had tremendous success with Metalla, kind of with Nova, huge success. So he's doing a carbon deal too. And I trust EB,
yep.
Brett. So I got a lot of that. Got a lot of that. But EB doesn't believe in carbon either. Thinks that's bullshit. But it's
If it's a government mandated thing, like if it's forced on industry, if it's forced on consumers, then they can make this thing, which is a total farce. They can actually like they can turn it into an asset class. Not to say it should exist at all, but it doesn't mean it. I mean, it really could exist if they demand it exist.
exactly. That's exactly right. So I'm trying to sometimes you want to swim against the stream, and sometimes you want to flow with the stream. So it's kind of a diversification for me, if you will. For Marin, if his latest deal works out, the way he set up the hurdles and all this, I think it will. And with billions and billions of dollars that the Bidenistas and other governments are throwing at this area, some of these companies could make a lot of money. So, I think my guess is, Marin is concentrated there because he's got a big possession. He could easily make $100 million on that company alone, easy, and I think he will. So, I don't
It's
know,
an interesting speculation.
speculation, and I'm going to play along with it, but I treat it like a hot potato because it's fundamentally unsound. Yeah. And my guess is that after that deal works out for him, and I hope it does, not for the same reasons that Marin may hope it works out.
Yeah.
I want to see Marin make a huge amount of money. And, I'm all for Marin as a person. Um, I think what Marin's probably going to do is stop screwing around with writing a newsletter and just spend more time with his family and enjoy being a rich guy. That's my guess is what's going to happen. Which
Okay.
is too bad because the deals that he's come up with are generally really good deals because he's boots on the ground and he's technically excellent. But nothing lasts forever.
What does Doug think of nuclear fusion as a future source of power? I mean, this was big in the news the other day when supposedly a big breakthrough happened. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, what happened the other day was for the first time, oh, there was net generation of power. In other words, the immense amount of power they had to put into to the hydrogen capsules, I guess, if that's really the correct way to describe them. More came out than came in. Well, that was for a very brief period of time, and the whole experiment wasn't power positive. It was just that whole thing. Proof of concept is all it was. So it looks like it'll work, and with a lot more money and brain power, then proof of concept looks like it'll work. But the overall power cost of getting it done was immensely negative. So
Mm.
it was a science experiment. But so what do I know about it other than just to keep up to these things? And I read science magazines, and I'd like to watch Fraser Cain's Universe Today.
It's great. Yeah.
Yeah, he's very good, and things of that nature. But I'm all for fusion.
But I mean, it's kind of, I mean, if we could just take advantage of the nuclear um, fission that's available today, right? I mean, it produces an unlimited amount of energy, and people say that there are risks associated with it. But it almost seems like if we actually exploited the systems that were available today,
Yeah,
it wouldn't be totally, it'd be totally unnecessary. We'd have more than enough.
exactly. There's essentially zero risk. Well, it's not zero risk to anything, but especially if they stop building these multi-billion-dollar, gigantic government project type nuclear reactors and use the same types of technology that have been used in ships and nuclear submarines for decades. Like how many decades? About let me see, about 60 years roughly. So these are pretty well defined, and that's just the US version of it. So that's the way it should go. Uh, but it's all controlled by the government. So it's all run as stupidly as possible to do.
Okay, Doug, with everything going on today, what would Charles Knight do?
Yes. What would Charles Knight do? Well, what would Charles Knight do? We'll have to figure that out, actually, because in the next episode of his adventurous life, it's going to be called Terrorist. He's not a, nothing wrong with terrorism. It's a method of warfare. It has its place, although, it's not something you're supposed to do. He's accused of it, but he doesn't engage in terrorism, although he's accused of it, which will lead to his next adventure, which is Warlord. So that they're going to get more weird and adventurous, interesting. But what would Charles Knight do today?
Yeah.
Today, because he's a rich guy, and he's actively in the bad graces of the U.S. government. So, what is Charles Knight doing this moment? Well, I'm not exactly sure. I should be able to ask the question. Cal, what do you think he should be doing?
Well, it's got to be playing a long game. So all the obvious stuff, the like what happened in Assassin, that kind of a thing, is I think is out of the picture at this stage because it's too short term in nature, and it has to go much bigger and much broader with an organization probably. And that'd
Yeah,
be-
well, Charles has got the Paladin Network, which is a
Yep.
very powerful tool that's working in his advantage. And he's developed a totally magical drug, but one that could easily be done in reality. It just happens to be that this is a really good drug, not just a fun drug, but a constructive drug. He's got that working in his advantage. Um, but what is Charles going to do next?
It seems like he'd have to fully exploit the Paladin network to really see what the possibilities of that are. I think that's the plot line that really is left hanging from the last book.
Yeah, no, he's not going to just leave it there and abandon it. He's going to take advantage of it. I was watching a movie just last night, as a matter of fact, a series, not a movie, called Shooter, where the hero is. These were all ex-military special forces guys. They're all the heroes in all these series, and they have like Batman or Superman like abilities, but they're supposed to be just ordinary guys. So there are people like that exist,
Mhm.
but not really. Uh, so this hero's name is Jim Don or Joe Bob or some southern name like that, Swagger. And he is a truly expert sniper. And he uses, he's a good thinker too. So is Charles going to do that type of thing? No, that would be a misallocation of Charles' talents. And Charles is highly competent, but he's not an undiscovered Superman like Joe Bob Swagger is.
Okay.
So what's Charles going to do? Don't worry. He's going to do something very interesting. And hopefully we'll all find out within a year. Yes,
I
he's
hope so.
accused of being a terrorist, which is a big no-no in today's world.
Okay. So next question is how to become a millionaire and beyond in these times, in Doug's opinion.
Good grief. You know, it's like that movie, Jimbo, the Japanese movie, where the samurai comes to a fork in the road and he takes it. And if he'd gone the other way, the adventure wouldn't have happened. Unfortunately, I guess he took the right road.
Mm.
So there's a big element of luck. But then again, luck favors the prepared. So since luck favors the prepared, if you want to make a lot of money, I don't know how to do it. There's a million ways to do it, actually. Yeah, I'm sure there are a million. But you got to be prepared. So what does that mean? You got to have as much knowledge as you could possibly absorb in your head. You got to know as many people and be on good terms with important people, good people, because it's been said, there's a lot of truth to it, that we're the average of 5 people we most closely associate with. So if you just go out and drink beer every night, a bunch of idiots, chances of you doing it are pretty slim.
Yep.
So you got to have the knowledge of people, you got to have the diligence. So you can do it, and you don't know which opportunity, but if you prepare yourself mentally, physically, ethically, when it presents itself to you, you'll be able to jump on it. It's the only answer there is I can think of. I mean, what do you think?
The only other just kind of general advice that I would have around that, I guess, is that essentially the way that you create wealth is by solving problems, right? So delivering a product or service to somebody. So like that's that reciprocity is how you build wealth. So I think it's important for people who do not hang around with a lot of the easiest way, I guess, to get paid a lot for solving problems is to solve the problems of people who have a lot of money, which means you obviously need to be around them. But they have, be surprised, rich people have actually more problems generally than most people, and most of them are, and they're often more complicated, and they don't know how to solve them. And oftentimes they don't even know they don't have everyone's around them for their money, so they don't know who they can trust. So solving rich people problems is a faster way, I think, to do this than trying to build the next consumer device or something like that. That's a much more difficult way of doing things. Um, so just keep in mind, rich people have problems. Solving rich people's problems can lead to it. Another part of it, I guess, is that just if because it is basically problem solving, thinking about it in terms of solving rich people problems versus consumer product problems is one way, but just another way is just thinking that you want to spend your energy in dealing with things where a lot of value is unlocked when you solve that problem. So, like for instance, I know there's a lot of people right now that help people. Like, we have a friend who, a Canadian guy, who helps people get set up offshore, and he makes a lot of money doing it. There's a good business doing it, and his primary market is Canadians, and primarily he helps them get into Panama. And so he's focused on that one group in that one area, though he does a lot more than that. And because the tax savings for the Canadians, as soon as they basically relocate, is so substantial, there's such a huge savings for them. If makes that easy for them to do, and for them, he's solving such a huge problem for them where there's immediately, new money created essentially by doing it, he can take a big piece of it. So that's solving rich people's problems, solving a big enough problem that it actually, there's plenty of money that can be made from it. I think those kinds of things are the easiest ways to get ahead. And along the way, you will learn a lot more about like the needs of these wealthier people or the needs of people who are working on these bigger problems, and that can lead to all kinds of other stuff. Does that make sense, Doug? Did I explain that?
Make huge sense. I totally agree. Yeah. I think our two answers together kind of point to the actual answer. And
Okay.
if you want something to help get your thinking moving in the right direction, I suggest going onto YouTube and watching a whole bunch of Have Gun World Travels that were done in the late 50s and early 60s. And they're really a good watch. Just a half hour black and white show, but it's about how somebody, Powell he was just solving people's problems.
That's right.
That's all he was doing in the best way possible.
Now, the other way to become a millionaire, what we should probably mention is that if you have if you have $10,000 and you hold on to it through this inflationary spiral, it could turn into being millions of dollars, right? If we could all be trillionaires by Zimbabwe standards before this is all over.
Yes, even 100 trillionaires, because that was the largest bill that was printed by Zimbabwe by my personal friend, Gideon Gono, who was the head of the Zimbabwe Reserve Bank, printed that thing. And he explained why he had to do it to me.
It's for the military, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was because they had to give the military something, and all they could give them was bigger pieces of paper. So, and Gideon also gave me, I have it someplace, any paper that he wrote that he was trying to sell Comrade Mugabe on as to why Zimbabwe ought to go to a gold Zimbabwe dollar. There's a lot more behind the famous runaway inflation in Zimbabwe that most people are aware of. And that's the part of the story that I think nobody knows except you and me and the people who are listening to this.
Yeah, it's amazing terms. Do you think the guy who was printing the money wouldn't be a hard money guy? Turns out he was.
It's, it's just really strange and curious.
Okay. Next question. Doug once mentioned that stable, low tax monarchies are better than unstable democracies in third world countries, since monarchs have more to lose because the people know who to blame. Should poor countries with dormant monarchies, i.e., formal sultans and kings, absolve democracy and take up ANCAP philosophies like a decentralized kingdom? And if so, would they perform better for the individual rather than a dictatorship that could be overthrown for a democracy?
Yes, the answer is absolutely, because democracies, especially in backward primitive countries, are a very bad idea. They never end well for all kinds of different reasons. There's a chap, well, we're not close, but we're friends, Hans Hermann Hoppe, who, he's an economics professor, well known actually, that talks about the advantages of that kind of a political structure. But of course, I'm an anarchist, an anarcho-capitalist. But, so I don't believe in government as an institution. But under the circumstances, as you just mentioned, small primitive country has a sheikh, has a paramount chief, whatever it might be. Yeah, that would work out very well as long as you're dealing with somebody who's kind of a philosopher king uh, and is oriented on it. But, the power and money corrupt you so easily.
Yeah, it's like if you want that job, you're the wrong guy for it, you know?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Next question. Since Doug expressed interest in metaphysical topics, has he heard of intelligent design? She says, apparently, 1,000 plus scientists, natural sciences mostly, have signed a declaration a few years back saying that they have doubts about Darwin's theory of evolution via random mutations, and natural selection. Some of them say that Darwin's theory is a biological, chemical, physical, statistical, astrophysical impossibility as the explanation for the emergence of life. They say that there are traces of an intelligent designer visible everywhere in nature. Has Doug ever heard of this? And if so, what does he think about it?
Yes, of course I've heard it. Uh, and you can round up 1,000 scientists to believe almost anything.
Well, with
Uh,
that last couple of years, prove that, if nothing else.
yes, it did. Yeah, for both COVID and, for that matter, for global warming.
Yep.
So, yeah. And anyway, just because 1,000 people or 10,000 or 100,000 or 1,000,000 believe something, it means absolutely nothing. The answer to the question of, is intelligent design possible, in my opinion? Well, I guess so. One favorite movie of mine is, what's that movie with Dr. Manhattan?
Watchmen.
That's The Watchmen, right? So it's a superhero movie, but a rather weird and strange superhero movie. And Dr. Manhattan, at the end of it, decides to go off to a different galaxy and create life. So, yeah, since I'm a solipsist, and I believe that anything that you can imagine can probably happen, yeah, sure, I guess it's possible. But in the world we live in, the real world, right here and now, no. I mean, as far as we know, you know, life on Earth started about, well, it depends on how you want to define life and how advanced life is. Let's say 600 million years ago. And there's been an awful lot of work by scientists that, you know, show how these things progress, logical reasons for it. I buy those arguments. So, intelligent design, well, like I said, like I answered the question,
Yeah.
no, here, no.
All right. Next question. I understand the concept of having good positions in solid investments, for example, gold and other great commodities. But what's your take, Doug, on derivatives? I know of people who sold everything besides the land that they live on. They sold it all because of the fear or threat of derivatives in the financial system. They converted everything into a 100% gold position during the last spike in gold, only to see it drop in dollar values, 1,700 down to 1,100 in short order. I do have large portions of my wealth in real estate because I very much understand it, but not 100%. To me, 100% position in anything is not an intelligent plan. Next says, I would like to know your thoughts in this area of derivatives and the threats that they represent to the stock market and financial system.
Well, that's a good question. Uh, I too fear derivatives because the entire world is hugely over financialized at this point. Hugely. There's just way, it seems to me, way too many people and institutions that are involved in uh, buying and selling and creating financial structures and all this type of thing. This is all wasteful. It doesn't create more real wealth at all. And uh, commodity futures contracts are derivatives. Oh, that's not. We have options in commodity futures, and same for stocks and all this. And I play with all of these things, and they're fun and they're useful. But they don't weave or spin or sew, and it's gone way. Most of these derivatives would not exist. I mean, some would exist, some serve a useful purpose, no question about it. But if we had a sound monetary system where we just used a commodity as money, as a medium of exchange in a store of goods, they wouldn't be the big deal they are today. So anyway, that's the theory. But in practice, yeah, I think they could all blow up for all kinds of reasons. Anything from solar flare that melts down the world of computers, all those derivatives and who owns them, and you know, they all go away. There's all kinds of things that can go wrong. It's what we call a moving paper fantasy.
Right.
These derivatives dangerous. So, yeah, that's why you want to own a bunch of gold and physical coin, gold and silver, physical coins in your own possession, and own some real estate for what legal title does some good, and have be diversified and play with derivatives. But yeah, they could absolutely blow up the financial, no question about it in my mind.
Yeah, I think it's just that I've been reading. I remember Bill Bonner writing in the early 2000s about the derivatives time bomb. It's a long fused time bomb over the last 20 years. Nothing major has happened with it. So I think that's the, but just because it hasn't occurred, as it hasn't occurred, the leverage and the size of these things have compounded and just gone exponential.
Yes,
So
yeah. I mean, so we know there's a time bomb, and it's big, maybe nuclear sized. So try to insulate yourself from.
okay. All right. Doug mentions that the Orient, particularly Thailand, is a region that he enjoys. He mentions due to his European complexion, he'll always be treated as an outsider. If Doug had been East Asian and learned the language, would he be living there now instead of Uruguay?
Well, what I still like having thousands of acres on a farm wi- here or someplace, which I couldn't practically have in the Orient. I mean, that's just not really very possible. So, uh, and I prefer Western civilization or all of the things around it, what there is that's left of Western civilization to others. So, I would think that if I was born Thai or Chinese or what have you, I would think I would try to gravitate it to the US or Canada or the like. Uh, but as it stands, you're probably better off being in the Orient than you are in the West because they're really not acting as stupidly as we are in the West, generally speaking.
True. Okay. Um, this is from Warren. He says, I've been reading about the neuroscience of meditation and its long term beneficial effects. Do either of you utilize meditative practices? And if so, can you share your experiences? If not, are there any practices you employ to focus attention or enhance mood or tranquility?
Well, I'm up for meditation. Have done it. I like it. Not well disciplined. So I don't do it every day, which I should. And think it's all benefits, no losses. So I really should just sit down and discipline myself and do it because I know the drill.
Yeah.
Look for it. So what do I do that's helpful is meditation? Well, I like to get exercise. And in particular, I like to do yoga, which I've fallen way on that. Uh, what I do now is not, I would not dignify it by calling it yoga. I'd call it kind of, you know, pitiful stretching. But I want to get back into it because it's important. It's kind of related. Proper yoga
It
is
is.
very related to meditation. It is. But all right, so what do I do? Um, I get gratification and feel good and mellow just going out to the gym and pumping iron for half an hour, very beneficial. So I think there's many paths up the mountain is the answer to the question.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Okay. I've meditated for a long time. I've been periods where I've been very consistent about it. Um, and then periods where I've not been consistent about it. But I meditated this morning. I meditated yesterday morning. So that's kind of the track I'm on now. I actually was thinking today I should start trying to do it twice a day. So 'cause I think afternoon would be good. I know the transcendental meditation folks, it's all based around a 2 times a day standard, and that's the way they do it. So I don't do transcendental meditation, but I like the idea of twice a day. So I'm a big believer. I think it's a great idea. I think if you, um, and I just do the most simple method, which is basically just to focus on the breath and try and observe your mind and its foolishness and bring it back to the breath. And just that's what it is. And you just all the biggest practical benefit you get is that it separates the time between stimulus and response. So if something happens around you where you might automatically, reflexively, I guess, respond within a certain emotional way or in a certain way, period. This changes it. So there's just this like just a little breath, half a second, like where you can see it and you can see the way you're going to react and you can choose to let it happen or to alter the course. That's the most practical benefit I think you get from it.
That makes a lot of sense. I completely agree. That just brought something to mind, uh, kind of related, is that there are like three ways, differences between Western culture and, let me see, three monks are sitting there, and a loud noise goes off in back. A Western monk jumps with the noise, then gradually calms down. And then there's the Hindu monk where the noise goes off and he doesn't react at all. And then there's the Zen monk, and the noise goes off and he jumps just like the Western monk does. But then the noise goes off a second time, and the Western monk jumps, but not quite as far. The Hindu monk doesn't jump at all again, and the Zen monk jumps exactly the way he did the first time. And by the time the noise goes off the 100th time, the Western monk doesn't pay any attention to it at all. The Hindu monk is still sitting there, and the Zen monk jumps just as he did the first time because everything is new.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's three ways of training yourself to react to outside stimulus. And I think that kind of relates to this.
Yeah. It's interesting. Okay. Follow-up question to crisis investing. When Russia first invaded the Ukraine and the Russian stock market crashed, I personally started to build a position in Luke Oil and the RSX EFT until the US government halted trading. Did Doug or Matt take any positions in Russian related companies? And can you just, if so, can you discuss the situation of investing in Russia?
Well, I have a friend who's a Russian who, for many years, has been very successfully trading Russian and Ukrainian bonds of different types, which offered very high yields and discounts, maturity, and generally do short-term stuff. He had a lot of money. He's a Russian, though. It's very helpful. Um, and he wanted me to get involved in it, and I should have, because I could have done really well. But if I hadn't, I'd be trapped. I'd be trapped. I mean, that money would be. Now he's come up with ways to, using somebody in Russia that you can trust, really trustworthy guy. Don't worry about it.
Of course.
Yeah, maybe I don't know, but I'd rather. Uh, so uh, there was one Russian mining company, looked really good, and traded in Canada, but the assets in Russia. So forget about it. I basically suffered a remote wipeout on the thing. All of the assets still there, but God knows what's happening. So am I doing anything in Russia? The answer is no. The risk reward just doesn't work, especially today.
I remember as it started and those stocks, which were already cheap, got crushed. And I was tempted to buy them too. And I was just it seemed so unstable at the moment. I didn't do it, or I decided to to put more thought into it later that day or the next day. And it wasn't too long after that they started to the sanctions rollout came, and it became clear it was really risky to invest in these. But I don't know
Yeah,
what it is.
this underlines the fact as grave as financial risks, economic risks are today, political risks are actually our biggest risks. That's a perfect example.
Yeah, it is. Okay, well, let's just do one more question, Doug, and then we can cover some more of these later in the week. Um, this question is: are you both aware of the positive news coming out of El Salvador? The president there has cleaned up the country and eliminated the crime organizations. Well, as Doug has stated, it is still Central America, but this is a very positive development. Many foreigners have moved since.
Yep. Uh, the current president of El Salvador,
It's
uh, very
Bukele, I
interesting.
think.
I mean, I wish I'd run into him years ago. I'd say that El Salvador would have been probably my least favorite country in America. I mean, it's overloaded with people, had this giant crime problem, and you know, poor peasants. What a mess! I mean, places got very little to recommend it. But Bukele, I think I'm pronouncing his name right if I remember.
Yep.
Um, yeah, making Bitcoin usable as national currency, and now he's floating these volcano bonds. Where we got to find out more about them. They sound interesting and
Great
run
marketing too. Just good marketing.
good marketing.
Oh,
Yeah, but he's playing with fires because if he's too successful, I don't have any doubt that the powers that be are going to. Well, something bad could happen to him, or he'll lose the next election, whether he wins or not. And, and El Salvador is an unstable place. It really is. So I'm all for it. I wish him well, but it's a
yeah.
dangerous road home.
Yeah. Yeah. And they were using the US dollar as their currency, as I understand it. So, they were all,
Or
it's not like they weren't giving up anything to try and push Bitcoin there, right? They were, because they weren't losing the power to print money because no one had any faith in their own currency anyway. So they'd abandoned. But obviously, then they're at the total, they're totally dependent upon the US banking system, everything in order to be able to keep dollars coming in. So smart of him to do it. And he had little to lose. But I remember there's one time he was supposed to go to some event in the US and he canceled at the very last minute. He was supposed to go to a Bitcoin conference, I think. Canceled at the very last minute. And there were rumors going around that they were like that he had heard of some assassination threats or some, that he was going to have some trouble coming to the US somehow. And so he decided, or that some nastiness was going to happen in the country if he left. Well, a lot of times the coup has happened when the leader leaves town. So
yeah,
he stays. So yeah, he's got to be careful for sure.
yeah. And this kind of relates to what we're going to talk about, I guess, the next time. I guess on Wednesday about how all kinds of really bad and really important things are happening all at once now. So it's not like the old days when you can be a rogue leader and do what you want. So I think everybody will find Wednesday's conversation pretty interesting from that point of view. Kind of relates to what's happening in El Salvador in some ways.
Great. Okay, well, we'll leave that here for now, Doug, and we'll be back on Wednesday to discuss those major trends and more Q&A later in the week. So thanks very much.
Thanks.